for joining us for 5 on 5. I'm Joe Sullivan, pleased to be joined by Congressman Bentz. Congressman, thanks for joining us from Washington, D.C.
Great to be with you, Joe. Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity.
The House passed what President Trump refers to as one big, beautiful bill. The Senate is now taking a close look at this bill. What would the impact be on taxpayers if the Senate fails to pass this bill?
Right. So the bill contains an extension of the Trump tax cuts from 2017. So, and a number of other things. But if the Senate fails to pass it, then the consequences, if things stay exactly where they are, is that people would have a very significant tax increase next year. So by very significant, I mean 20% for many people, more tax they're paying or have paid over the past 10 years. So it would be devastating, I think. I think that the reports that I've seen indicate that if the bill with the extension in it does not pass, then we run the risk of losing some 6 to 7 million jobs, and we run the risk of seeing the United States go into a recession. So extending the Trump tax cuts from, well, nine and a half years ago now is extremely important. There's many other parts of the bill, but I'll just stop there.
The Senate passed the Secure Rural Schools Reauthorization Act. Why has this not seen much movement in the House so far?
So the Senate took the easy road, and when senators such as my senators, Senator Wyden and Senator Merkley, talk about passing it, they never mention the fact that they didn't put any money in it. They simply passed what we would call the authorization bill. They didn't pass the appropriation bill, or they didn't find the money to fund it. So to be taking credit for having passed it is a little premature, don't you think? And so I would just say that right now what you have is a situation where somebody, the House, has to find the money to actually fund the secure rural schools. It's anticipated, we think, that that'll be put into the Farm Bill, and that's going to be coming up later this year.
How concerned are you about any plan to sell off public lands?
Well, I'm very concerned about it. And in fact, I issued a press release yesterday that I spent a considerable amount of time writing. I do not support the type of disposition of federal land suggested by Senator Lee out of Utah, which I think is based on his belief that the federal government shouldn't own any federal land. I disagree with that. The federal government owns about 20% of the land in the USA. I think it's doing the federal government a bad job managing that land, and no wonder people don't want the government to own it. But the difficulty is we don't want to go from bad to worse. So let's do this right. Let's have a careful, thoughtful discussion, and please see my press release with a more detailed explanation.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back after this short break with part 2 of our 5 on 5 with Congressman Bentz. Welcome back to part 2 of our 5 on 5 with Congressman Bentz. I'm Joe Sullivan. There's been plenty of feedback on social media asking you to do an in-person town hall. Do you have any plans to do an in-person town hall soon?
No, I did one, a telephone town hall just about a month ago, and focused on Josephine, Jackson, and Douglas counties. I think our phone system dialed 100,000 people. 13,000 people stayed on the line for the hour and some odd minute discussion. There weren't interruptions, there weren't demonstrations, there weren't displays of rudeness. And so I think it worked. We reached 13,000 people. And that's far, far, far more than have ever attended any of my town halls. At some point in the future, we will do live town halls, but people that were attending the first 4 I held this year live were more interested in protesting than listening or discussing.
Recently, you voted in favor of cutting funding to PBS and NPR in the rescission package. It's now moved to the Senate. What would you say to the people who work at Southern Oregon PBS who could be impacted by this?
Yeah, so I put a map together and went to leadership with it, showing how many PBS stations were situated in my district, and there's a significant number of them. I think they're very important. The challenge in the current situation is to recognize that there are other ways of funding those stations, and we're looking at those right now.
What other ways?
Well, what you do is you go to the appropriations group and you say, hey, these stations are extremely important for communication purposes, and you discuss and arrange and make sure that there's support for continuing to fund those stations. Those stations, let's face it, I had my team go through and look at all the programs that are put on, and they are terribly biased. And when you have public paying for biased reporting, the public gets, at least my portion, gets upset justifiably. So the question is going to be, if you're going to continue that biased type of approach, then why should the public support you? So we'll be working on both sides of the issue, the funding and also the bias.
All right, we have about a minute left. Is there anything else you'd like our viewers to know about?
I want everybody to know that, as I've said many, many times, I think that the Medicaid programs that we have in our state are terrifically important and essential. And the fact that we're trying to make them work better should not be cast, as it has been by many Democrats, as some attempt to tear down the system. We're not tearing down the system. We're trying to make sure we can sustain and strengthen the system. So we're all watching to see what the Senate's going to do, and then we'll go from there. Also, our rural hospitals have to be protected, and I've been working on that.
Congressman Bentz, thanks for joining us from Washington, D.C.
I appreciate it, Joe. Thank you.
All right, stay with us. We'll be right back with more local news.